Hey guys, this is going to be one of two videos where we're going to talk about making bends in sheet metal parts. This video is going to focus on the sketch bend command, which is up top here in SolidWorks. And this guy is for when we want to make bends in our sheet metal parts and we don't want to add any materials. So we will talk about creating some of these bends, some of these edges on parts later, but all of those cases we are physically adding material. In this case, we are taking existing material and we are bending across it. Now, with most of these commands, we have to make sure that we first have an actual sheet metal part. I've created it as sheet metal, and that will allow me to use a bunch of these different pieces that I otherwise could not use. So I have that, which means that I can go ahead and start making my sketch bend. First thing I need is an actual sketch. So I need to be drawing across something, and I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch for where I want to bend across, just like it's called sketch bend. So I have my piece, and the important thing we're seeing here, we'll get back to this a little bit later in the video, but we have our sketch selected. And because we have our sketch selected, we can go in and we can select our sketch bend in order to create the bend that we are looking for. And with that, voila, we hit sketch bend and we're in this piece. What you will notice is nowhere in this do you see my sketch. Do you see an opportunity to change my sketch or add to my sketch or anything like that? I have to have that sketch selected before I hit my sketch bend. Otherwise, it will instead have me try to create a new sketch. This piece that looks like it's going to be that, and that's what most people would guess is actually a different piece. This is going to select where everything is bent from. And since the picture is worth 100 words, let's go ahead and show it. I go through, I select my piece, and I select this bottom area. This is the face that is my base face. That is what I just clicked on for this guy right here. And by selecting that, I've said that here is my line, here is my base. Everything on the opposite side of my line as my base is going to be rotated up by 90 degrees. So I've taken all of this existing material, none of it's new, and I've bent it across this line such that it is up at a 90-degree angle. Voila. Okay, with this, I do have the opportunity, I can set that angle to whatever I so please. So 45 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever I want in order to create my piece here. Now, there is a difference if I choose this face as my option instead of the other one. So now when I select this face, you're seeing that the palm has been rotated up. The distance has been rotated up is 20 degrees. Everything up top is staying the same. Everything down bottom has rotated 20 degrees. When I had it before, I had selected this piece and everything on the top had rotated 20 degrees. And everything that is blue currently, well, this blue bottom here, had stayed where it was originally. So with that, that is the choice of what face I want to work with. And there is normally a correct-ish feeling choice. However, it's all going to result in the same model one way or the other. It's just a matter of how you want things oriented and normally how you want to work with things, because it makes certain pieces a little bit easier to understand and interact with. Okay. Now, one thing to talk about, and I think I zoom in a little bit more on this, is this piece right here. So, as you can see, my sketch is going to be a dot somewhere around there. It's going straight into the board. I'm looking at it from the side, and I am moving everything here up, and everything here is staying the same. So this line is staying the same. And if I were to continue this line, it goes through, and my entire original piece is completely flat. It goes through all of this. However, even though this guy is being swung up, I have this piece right here, which seems to be on the opposite side of this line as I would want it to be. And that's because when I drew that sketch, I did not draw it in such a way that it made it through my entire sketch. There is a piece of my sketch, and I'll rotate my view here so that we can see. There's a piece of my sketch right here. This piece is above if I continued this line. That is above it right there. And it didn't get bent. So basically what happened is I have this line right here drawn. I selected, well, I didn't select that face. I selected this face over here. And everything that is physically on the opposite side of this line, if I were a little guy in a go-kart driving across this hand, I'd have to drive through this hand to get up into my peninsula here where I am past the line, but it is different. So because there is not a line that continues all the way, so there's no line here saying that I have to go and bend across it, it is not going to be bent. It's going to stay with the original piece that is physically connected to, that I could go to without traveling across a line. And we're going to use that in a couple moments here. Last thing, I'm going to show this a little bit better in a second, but we have the ability to change the radius. So this is the overall part. You see that I've got a pretty sharp curve right here. I've basically rotated it off, and that is using this default radius over here. I don't have to always use the same radius. I don't have to use whatever I set as my default when I made it sheet metal. I can change that. And what that is physically doing is that is changing the radius of my part right here. If I chose a more drastic number, it would be a much bigger radius. And as I get closer and closer to 0, it becomes more of just a flat curve. So very small number, very small curve. Large number, large curve is just the radius of how the sheet metal is rotated here. And we'll show that a lot better in a little bit when we're talking about some other things. Okay, so that's great. I can do this and I can draw a ton of lines and I can end up with my overall part. That is a lot of work, especially since a lot of the time we can do all of this at once. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit my sketch. And I'm going to add just an arbitrary second line to it. And that second line, I'm going to say that I want to bend both across this line and this line at the same time. And so long as I want them bent the exact same way, I can do that all in one command. So with this, I'm going to go back to Sketch Bend, except you notice that, like I said earlier, this guy should either be a sketch that I'm physically editing, and since this is gray, it's not black or blue, black being fully defined, blue meaning underdefined. I am not currently in that sketch, and nor do I have that sketch selected, because that was blue when it was physically clicked on and selected, meaning that when I go in and I click on my sketch bend, I have made a mistake because I can now create a new sketch. So when I try to click on that line, it created a new sketch. It doesn't let me go in and select a sketch. So we're going to have to exit out of this sketch bend, and we're going to create a new sketch bend with that piece selected, and now I can work with it. Now the interesting thing about this is when I select this body, I'm going to select this body in the middle, and you notice that I have two pieces that appear to be being bent across because I have two lines. If I were my little car in here, it would have to cross a line to go through here. It would have to cross a line to go through over here to this piece, meaning that I have a bend there. It is going to be at an angle, and it is pushed 90 degrees up in this case. So 90 degrees up, we have a piece that looks like that. And just to show how this 90 degrees is measured, it's away from that part. So if I change it to 45 degrees, I have 45 degrees up from this side, 45 degrees up from this side. This is my base piece. It doesn't move. Okay. There we are. Our overall part, we've got the funky hand going on here. Perfect. Give me a second to catch up here. Okay. Looking at my sketch, I am now going to work with the whole idea of having multiple. So I'm going to create a sketch across all these fingers. And initially, if I take that sketch and I say, oh, well, I only want 2 of these fingers to actually drop down. I want to drop these 2 down, let's say. I can't do that because I have a line here. Everything is going to bend. I don't have the opportunity to say, I just want this surface. I can't select just this surface and just this surface. I have to select the entire piece. There's no option for that in our very simple sketch bend option selection. So when I go into that, it is going to rotate my entire piece like so. Huzzah. Even if I go through and I select the other side, which all of these are individual bodies, all these fingers are individual bodies based off of that. No, I'm not allowed to do that. It is shutting me down in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit the sketch. And what I do is I convert all of these pieces. So I now have all of these lines that are currently highlighted in blue right here. And I go through and I trim and I basically take out these little pieces in between, such that I now have 4 individual lines. 4 individual lines sounds nice, but it is still not going to do what I want it to do. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to turn the lines that I'm not using into construction lines. So just a brief reminder in case you didn't quite see it, these lines are already construction lines so that they are not included in my bend. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the outside 2 lines here and switch them to construction. So there should be nothing trying to bend across those construction lines. Keyword, of course, being should be. Because in a second here, with both of these converted, I go into my sketch bend. Fast forward a little bit there. And you see that it is wanting to bend all of these, even though it shouldn't be bending this guy and this guy because those are my construction lines, which shouldn't impact anything as far as our sketch or extrusion. This happens every so often with extrusions, every so often with other pieces where SolidWorks is just a little bit behind the fact that those are construction lines. It doesn't quite catch it, and it should. If we went through and updated it, if we did this 10 times, 9 times out of 10, SolidWorks would probably catch it and would not rotate those. In this case, since we're in the middle of the video, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the pieces so that I know for sure I am only rotating the 2 lines, the 2 fingers that I want. I go back and I do exactly the same thing. And in this case, I have only rotated the 2 pieces that I have lines between. Huzzah, I've got my little I love you sign with my block hand. And this is our way of getting individual pieces. We're remembering that it's only what's going across a line that matters. Okay, before we do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and show the increased radius. I'm actually showing this increased radius for a specific reason. We are about to get into these guys up here, and it is a lot easier to tell what's going on with the increased radius. But when I make this giant radius, it also makes it very easy to see what I physically edited. So if I look at it from the side, you can see these became giant honking curves, which makes sense, but that's what we're physically editing. Okay, jumping forward. What we're going to do is we're going to look at those 4 options. And what I've done is I've created a physical body here. And it's probably easier to look at from the side. I've created a extrusion as a second body, so you're seeing there's a little 2 there because I have 2 physical bodies. One is my original sheet metal, the other is this body right here. And what this is this line right here is the line that we went and we have our fingers curled around. And what we're going to look at is how that line is defined. In order to make that easier, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this part such that it is red. Giving a second. There we go. Fast forward to that. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to physically edit my sketch bend, and we're going to look at the different options. So currently, we have the middle option. This guy, sorry, the middle option, the first option. And what this guy is doing is I went a little too far. It was going in and it was setting it so that the center of this radius is where this line is. So that line isn't exactly on the front edge, the inside edge of our part. It's not exactly on the outside edge of the part. It's not exactly on the radius. It's right in the middle here. And that is how that guy is set up. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to physically go in and I'm going to change it to my second option here. And this option shows a little bit of a picture, which you can probably see fine, but I'm going to draw it up so that I can mark it up. And it's got the line right here. So this line is our drawn line, and this guy right here is our curve. And we have that drawn line on the very edge of our physical curve. So that is exactly what's going to show up when we look at that drawn line, is going to be right on our curve. Again, by look at the drawn line, I mean the fact that I created this face right here of my surface is along that drawn line. You can kind of see, or you could kind of see before I covered it in my pen here, that it is the same line as we used for that before. And what you're seeing is the outside of our bend is set up along there. And this is important if you are creating a sheet metal piece that has to fit in something. So our critical dimension is how big is the outside of my box, how big is the outside of my curve. And that is a way to set it up so that that is your critical piece. That is where all of your dimensions are set up. Everything's working out nicely for you at that point. You're not making any mistakes. Now, alternatively, we can set something up so that it is the inside of this. So clicking on the next one, you may have seen there was a slight shift in our overall piece when we selected it. And basically what happens is this guy has moved back such that my line that I previously set up, and that's again this line right here and the edge of my piece coming up here. And what we're seeing is this line is perfectly lined up. Probably easier to see if I don't have a sketch over it. Perfectly lined up with the inside of the fingers there, such that everything is working there. And this is where I'm really interested in making sure that something fits in my box that I'm folding up. So I need to make sure that the critical dimension is that inside length. I don't want anything to screw up based off of that. I don't want it to be set to the outside length. This last option here is what happens if I need my critical length and I need to make sure that something is sitting flat on the bottom of my box here. And so what that's doing is that is saying that this line that we previously defined here, that's becoming this big surface of my red part, that is the line brought into 2D, is lining up right at the start of my curve. So it's right at the start of my curve here. The curve, no bending happens before this point. And why that is super helpful is because I now need something that's sitting on the very bottom of it. If it is that big, having that curve would interrupt my flat piece sitting on there. I don't know what it looks like. There's got some flat piece, sitting on it. And that curve is going to make that need to bend up if it actually wants to fit in my box now. So setting it up like this means that no matter where it is, this little point is not interfering with the curve. It can sit flush with the bottom of my box. Everything is fine and dandy there. So those are those 4 options for how to set up these pieces, and that is sketched bends in general here. Again, notice that I haven't done anything to create material. I have just physically gone through and I have added a few bends to my part. All of the material, all of this material that used to be right down here a second ago has been rotated up here and is still accounted for. It's just accounted for in another place. We're just bending across our sketched line. Hopefully that was helpful. See you next time.